practical and heartfelt, because understanding the significance of these days is only the first step. The real transformation happens when this understanding moves us to action. When you truly know deep in your heart that these 10 days are more beloved to Allah than almost anything else, does that not change how you plan your schedule during this period? Does that not change how you speak to your family about prioritizing worship during these days? Does that not change how you view small acts like a few extra units of prayer, a few extra pages of Quran, a few extra moments of remembrance, knowing that within this window, these small acts carry weight far beyond their apparent size? I think about how many people rush through these days without even realizing what they are missing. They go about their regular routines, perhaps vaguely aware that something significant is happening somewhere in the world as pilgrims gather for Hajj, but not truly connecting themselves to the spiritual current that flows through this period. And then the 10 days pass, and they realize almost in retrospect that they let an extraordinary opportunity slip through their fingers, an opportunity that will not return again until an entire year has passed. This is why I believe it is so important for us to talk about this, to remind each other, to prepare our hearts and our schedules in advance, so that when these 10 days arrive, we are ready. We are not scrambling at the last minute trying to figure out what to do. We have already decided, already planned, already committed ourselves to making the most of this brief but incredibly potent window of time. Because once these 10 days begin, they will not wait for us to catch up. They move forward regardless of whether we are prepared or not, and at the end of them, we will either look back with satisfaction, knowing we gave our best effort, or with regret, knowing we let something precious pass us by. So let this understanding settle into your heart today. Let it change the way you think about time, about worship, about opportunity. These are not just 10 ordinary days on a calendar. These are 10 days that Allah Himself has elevated above almost everything else. 10 days where sincere, consistent effort can outweigh the greatest sacrifices a person could make in ordinary circumstances. This is a mercy extended to every single one of us, regardless of our situation, our circumstances, our past shortcomings. All that is required is that we recognize the value of what is being offered, and that we choose wholeheartedly to seize it. Let me also address something that I think holds many of us back, and that is the feeling that we need to do something extraordinary, something grand, something visible, in order for these 10 days to feel meaningful. I meet so many people who tell me they wish they could go for Hajj this year. They wish they had the means to make some huge gesture, some dramatic act of worship that would mark these days as truly special. And while striving for the ability to perform Hajj is a noble goal, I want to gently remind you that the beauty of these 10 days is that they do not require grandeur. They do not require a plane ticket, a visa, or years of savings. They simply require presence. They require showing up, in whatever capacity you are able, with sincerity in your heart. Think about the person who cannot travel anywhere, who is confined to their home due to illness or responsibility, who feels disconnected from the grand scenes of pilgrims circling the Kaaba or standing on the plains of Arafah. I want that person to know, clearly and without doubt, that these 10 days belong to them just as much as they belong to anyone standing in Mecca. The reward available within this window is not reserved for those who are physically present at the sacred sites. It is available to every sincere heart, wherever that heart may be located on the face of this earth. A person sitting quietly in their room, engaging in remembrance of Allah, holds within their reach the very same elevated reward that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. The reward that surpasses even the sacrifice of a fighter in the path of Allah, except for the one who gives everything. This should bring immense comfort to those among us who often feel like they are on the outside looking in during major moments in the Islamic calendar. Whether it is Ramadan, whether it is Hajj season, there can be a quiet sense of longing, a feeling of missing out on something bigger than ourselves. But these 10 days remind us that proximity to a physical location is not what determines the value of our worship. Sincerity is what determines value. Consistency is what determines value. The condition of the heart is what determines value. And these things are available to every single person, in every single circumstance, regardless of geography, regardless of wealth, regardless of physical ability. I also want to reflect on how this understanding should shape the way we speak to our children, our families, and our communities as these days approach each year. So often, our conversations around Islamic occasions become focused purely on logistics. What food will be prepared, what clothes will be worn, what visits will be made, without much conversation about the spiritual weight of the occasion itself. I want to encourage all of us to shift that conversation. Imagine sitting down with your children before these 10 days begin and explaining to them, in language they can understand, that these are the most beloved days to Allah in the entire year. Imagine explaining to them why that is, walking them through the story, the wisdom, the mercy embedded within this period. What kind of impact would that have on a young heart? Growing up with the understanding that these days are not just about festivities, but about a rare and precious opportunity to draw close to their Creator. I think about how much of our religious understanding gets passed down through repetition without explanation, through rituals performed without a full grasp of their meaning. And I believe moments like this, moments of genuine reflection on why something matters, are what transform surface-level practice into deep-rooted conviction. When a person understands the why behind an act of worship, their engagement with that act transforms entirely. It is no longer a box to check, a tradition to follow, simply because it has always been followed. It becomes something alive, something meaningful, something they actively look forward to, rather than passively endure. This is exactly what I hope happens for every single person listening to this today. I hope that the next time these 10 days approach, you do not simply notice them on a calendar and think, "Ah yes, Hajj season is coming," and move on with your day. I hope instead that something stirs within you. A sense of anticipation, a sense of readiness, a recognition that a rare and precious door is about to open, and that you have already decided in advance exactly how you plan to walk through it. Let's also take a moment to reflect on how this teaching addresses something deeply human, which is our tendency to compare ourselves to others and to feel discouraged when we cannot match the achievements or sacrifices of those we admire. Perhaps you know someone who has fought for a righteous cause, who has given up comfort and safety for something greater than themselves, and perhaps quietly, you have felt that your own efforts pale in comparison, that your ordinary life of work and family and daily responsibilities could never measure up to that kind of sacrifice. This teaching about these 10 days directly addresses that quiet insecurity. It tells us that within this specific window, our ordinary efforts sincerely offered can rival even that extraordinary sacrifice. This is not meant to diminish the value of those who give everything for the sake of Allah. Rather, it is meant to lift up the rest of us, to show us that greatness in the sight of Allah is not reserved only for the extraordinary few, but is accessible to every sincere servant who takes advantage of the opportunities placed before them. I want you to carry this thought with you as these days approach each year. You do not need to compare your circumstances to anyone else's. You do not need to feel that because you cannot perform Hajj this year, because you cannot give large sums in charity, because you cannot fast every single day due to health reasons, that you are somehow excluded from the immense reward available during this period. Whatever capacity you have, however small it may seem to you, offered sincerely within these 10 days, holds a value that Allah alone can truly measure, and based on what we have learned, that value may very well exceed what we could imagine. I also want to touch on something about the nature of gratitude, and how it relates to this period. When we recognize that Allah has given us an opportunity this significant, an opportunity this accessible, an opportunity that requires nothing more from us than sincerity and effort within our own individual capacity, our natural response should be overwhelming gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that stays as a fleeting feeling, but the kind of gratitude that translates into action, into a genuine desire to make the most of what has been given to us. Think about how we respond when someone offers us something valuable in our worldly lives, a scholarship, a business opportunity, a chance encounter that could change our circumstances for the better. We do not simply feel grateful and move on. We act, we follow through, we make plans. We put in the effort required to actually benefit from what has been offered. I believe our response to these 10 days should mirror that same energy. Gratitude that moves us to action, appreciation that translates into genuine effort, recognition of a gift that compels us to actually use it rather than let it sit unopened. As we come to the heart of what these 10 days represent, I want to leave you with this thought. Every year this window opens for us again, a fresh chance, a renewed invitation from our Creator to draw close to Him in a way that carries reward beyond our full comprehension. It does not matter what happened in the previous months, whether we were consistent or inconsistent in our worship, whether we feel spiritually strong or spiritually depleted. These 10 days arrive regardless, offering every single one of us the same open door, the same immense opportunity, the same mercy extended without condition beyond sincerity and effort. Let us not be among those who let this door close without having walked through it. Let us not be among those who recognize the value of this period only after it has passed, filled with regret over missed opportunities. Instead, let us be among those who prepare, who plan, who anticipate, and who ultimately act, so that when these 10 days conclude each year, we can look back with hearts full of gratitude, knowing we did not let this precious window pass us by unnoticed. There is one more reflection I want to leave with you before we move forward, and it concerns the way time itself seems to bend around moments of true significance. 10 days, on paper, is nothing. It is a fraction of our lives, and yet we have just spent considerable time exploring how these 10 days carry weight that outmeasures months and years of ordinary effort. This tells us something about how Allah views time itself, not as a uniform, unchanging measure, but as something that can be infused with extraordinary value depending on what is placed within it. This should encourage every one of us to stop underestimating what can be accomplished in short bursts of sincere effort. So often we tell ourselves that real change, real spiritual growth, requires long stretches of time, months of consistency, years of discipline before we can expect any meaningful transformation. And while consistency over time certainly has its own immense value, these 10 days teach us that short, focused, sincere effort, offered within the right window, can produce results that rival lifetimes of ordinary practice. This is a lesson that extends beyond just this specific period. It teaches us to never underestimate the power of showing up fully, even briefly, when the moment calls for it. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, the scene that unfolds each year during these 10 days across the world. Millions of pilgrims gathering in white garments, stripped of worldly distinction, standing shoulder to shoulder regardless of wealth or status, all directing their hearts toward the same Creator. And simultaneously, in homes and mosques and quiet corners across every continent, countless other believers who could not make that physical journey are engaging in their own version of devotion, their own fasting, their own charity, their own remembrance, all connected by this same thread of opportunity that Allah has extended to the entire ummah during this specific window of time. There is something deeply unifying about this image. Something that should fill our hearts with a sense of belonging to something much larger than our individual lives. And so, as we prepare to move forward into understanding exactly what these 10 days ask of us, into the practical steps we can take to maximize what they offer, I want this foundational understanding to remain firmly planted in your heart. These are not ordinary days. They are the most beloved days of the entire year in the sight of Allah. They offer reward that can rival even the greatest sacrifices imaginable. And they are accessible to every single one of us, regardless of our circumstances, our location, or our past shortcomings. Let this truth settle deeply within you, and let it become the fuel that drives genuine, sincere action when these blessed days finally arrive. May we all be among those who recognize the value of these blessed days who prepare our hearts and our intentions in advance, and who make the most of every single moment within this sacred